Sure.
Thank you so much for talking to me. I'm chatting today to Sam Simister, who is one half of Gen M, who is an amazing company who are changing the face of the menopause. So you will do a much better job than I will of explaining what Gen M do. And do you want to explain sort of how you got into what you're doing, what Gen M does?
Yeah, of course. Well, firstly, it's lovely to see you, Sarah, and
Oh,
thanks for inviting me onto this chat. Yeah, sure. So I am Sam. Thank you. I am 56, and I guess 3 or 4 years ago now, I started to really experience some very strange symptoms. At the time, I was running our global supply chain. I was a board director at Innocent. I was traveling every month overseas, Asia, the States, South America. And I just started to feel quite strange. I was suffering with anxiety. I had the odd panic attack. Physically, my body was changing too. And I absolutely had no clue that I was probably well and truly in perimenopause, actually, and coming towards my menopausal phase. At that same time, I happened to bump into a very good friend of mine, Heather, who is my Gen M co-founder, and she won't mind my saying this, Sarah. She looks shocking, and for those of you that or have met Heather, she is so glamorous. She is so bubbly and full of energy, and I just didn't recognize her. So when we got chatting, as you do, she started to share some of her symptoms, and because I'm a couple of years, I guess, ahead. And Heather always loves to express it in the way that I'm the older one, she's the younger one, but it's fact. I am. When I started to share my experiences and suggest that maybe she might be perimenopausal, I think the light bulb came on for her, and she started to Google her symptoms and started to look for solutions. Like me, she found the landscape very disparate, and very little solution out there for what we now know are over 48 symptoms throughout this natural transition, and growing 48 symptoms. So to cut a very long story short, as we've both been in business for our whole career, we thought that we should try and do something to change this situation. So we started by doing some research. I am a scientist. I've used data all my life. And Heather and I had our own experiences, but I didn't want this to be an anecdotal or subjective exercise. I wanted some objectivity around me because data is very powerful. So we commissioned a piece of research, which we called the Invisibility Report. We used our own cash to do it. We spoke to over 2,000 women and those in transgender, and also those that associate as non-binary in the UK. And the data that came back was, my goodness me, it was so compelling. It basically amplified the voices of women in midlife, the majority of which were saying the same as us: woefully unprepared, absolutely knocked over by a steam train, fed up of being overlooked, underserved, feeling invisible, hence the name of the report. So armed with this, we thought we have no excuse, and we set out to bring businesses together. Why business? Well, business employ the majority of this audience, and they serve the majority of this audience. Their employees are also consumers. And we thought that by forming a collective, which we call Gen M, Generation Midlife or Menopause, whichever, but menopause at the moment, by bringing these powerful businesses together, we thought we would stand a chance of driving change at pace. And in a year, we have over 70 businesses on board, global names, household names that your listeners would recognize, right down to some small entrepreneurial startup businesses, but they are all on board with a commitment and a pledge to make a difference and to do something to support this overlooked, underserved audience.
Yeah, which is amazing, and the invisibility report is fascinating. I when I read through it, I was really shocked, and it's been brilliant in kind of preparing me as well. But I was really shocked, and there was some really key standout things, weren't there, around how women feel in midlife, and some of those, I guess, are linked to the physical side of the menopause, but also linked to the fact that your midlife and the the way we're made to feel about ourselves, the way society portrays us and things like that, to not necessarily just about menopause, but as you say, midlife as well. And what were some of the key things that you felt stood out from the invisibility report?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And thank you for mentioning society, because Heather and I do not see this as a gender issue or a workplace issue per se. It's a societal issue because the menopause is still a taboo. It really isn't talked about. And what we want to try and do is normalize the conversation. So some of the data points that stood out for me was the fact that on average, this natural transition can last up to 8 years, sometimes 15. I had no idea that that was the length of time that some of us could expect to be experiencing these symptoms. I thought that the fact that, less than 1 in 3 can name 2 or 3 symptoms. I mean, so many people are really struggling to identify with how they're feeling and the fact that it is perimenopause or menopause. The fact that the symptoms can be broken down into the physical ones, but as you say, the emotional and the psychological symptoms as well. And they're all very different and they make us feel very different. Some are easier to find solutions for than others. So there was a lot of data in and around that space that really surprised me. But I think that the data that really stood out for me, that made me realize I could and should try to do something, was that 88% of those asked said they wanted more from brands. They wanted more support from brands with signposting to products that was already in their portfolio to help ease, relieve, support a symptom. That really stood out for me. I've worked in FMCG all my life, and I thought, yeah, that was my experience. Nothing when you put it into the search. I thought the workplace stats were quite worrying. We know that the 40 to 50-year-old woman is the fastest growing demographic in the workplace, yet 25% of us are leaving because we don't have the support from our employers that we need. That I thought was shocking, because we are a talented workforce. We really are. We've got so much to give in this stage of our life. And experience, exactly. So that really stood out for me. And I thought, my goodness me, businesses need to know this. It doesn't really matter whether you look at the opportunity for businesses through whatever commercial angle, whether you're thinking about attraction, retention, and growth of your employee base, which is an expensive commodity, or where you're looking at an opportunity to retain, grow your market share, which is also so important today, because this audience, we control, broadly speaking, the household funds.
Yeah. And it covers so many different aspects, doesn't it? As you say, sort of the workplace and for businesses, but there's so much of this general awareness raising needing to be done, and it is getting better, but still, as you were saying, there's so many people that blindsided by it, had no idea, and they think they're going through getting dementia, they're going and getting antidepressants for depression, when actually what they need is things for the menopause, because there's still such a lack of awareness, and it just filters down to everything, doesn't it?
It does. And I think what we have learned in our first year is that if you start with raising awareness of the symptoms, that really helps. And what I would love to say is that I get very angry when I read what is being written in the press. I think it's scaremongering at its worst or best, whichever way you want to express it. And I would love, and Heather feels the same, we want to drive a positive message and tone of voice through this, because I might be 56, but I'm not dead. I've got a lot of value to give, and I want to thrive. I don't want to just survive. And the research also pulls out that women are done with not being represented authentically. And that could be in the press, that could be via brands, it could be anywhere. But we don't want to be labeled as the silver surfers, because we're not there yet. We're not that old. And we don't want to be airbrushed and told that we need to look 20 years younger. We want to be authentically represented, and we want to be spoken to in an empowering and positive way. That really came out in the data, Sarah, as well. So I think that report has so many hooks for anybody, whether you're a woman going through it or whether you're a business wanting to understand how you might start supporting your employees and your consumers. But there's so many nuances to this.
Definitely. And it's like you say, it's about making that change. So it's all very well kind of all the media information and hype that we've had recently, but it's got to come down to actual change happening, hasn't it? You know,
It
yes,
has.
it's great to raise awareness, but if people do something that's more of a token thing just to show they're actually they've listened, yes, we've done this token thing, but that's not good enough, is it? It has to be, like you say, positive change and actual change for real people. And I think that's when you're working with brands and the household names like Boots and things that you're working with, it makes it about real people, and real
It
people
does.
can actually see how they can be helped by it rather than it just
Yeah.
being,
Yeah.
it's great celebrities are involved, but it's got to be for the change for real people, hasn't it, as well?
I completely agree, and you raised such a good point. I mean, Heather and I felt that when we conducted the invisibility report, and I guess that was probably nearly 2 years now, because we did the research before we launched Gen M. We saw that the conversation had increased. We saw, as you say, lots of celebrities coming into the mix, lots of discussion in the media about HRT, not to HRT. And we thought, wouldn't it be interesting to see how the needle has moved? So in the summer just gone, we commissioned another invisibility report piece of research. So we put our research back out into field again. We spoke to the same number of people. And if I was to tell you that, yes, the awareness has slightly increased, but people's lived experiences haven't changed at all. And in fact, most cases, they've got worse, then I wonder how many of your listeners would be really surprised. So the point you make is so valid. Talk is cheap. What women are looking for, and I caveat that, of course, women transgender, I want to be inclusive, but women are looking for solutions. And again, the research in this latest report just blows me away. 90% of people said they had no idea whether their businesses even had a menopause policy or offered support. And 98% of AB women, so I'm talking probably about C-suite executives here, but still relevant, 98% said that what their organizations were doing wasn't effective at all. So it's so much more than just a tick box. And it's about solutions. It's about easy solutions that people can find readily. And I think that's why the pilot that Boots and Gen M launched in October, I don't know whether you saw it across social, but across their whole stable of stores in the UK, they actually selected 30 products that were menopause friendly. In other words, products that could support a symptom. We tagged them with a wobbler with the Gen M menopause friendly, and we put it across all stores. The engagement has been phenomenal. They've seen an uptick in search across their e-commerce, and the sales for those products have also increased. So I think that just goes to show that people are desperate for signposting. They want to be directed.
Yeah, and that's something that can be implemented quite easily, really, isn't it, into a lot of these retailers?
Yes, it can. It has to be done with integrity. And what we have done is we have worked quite hard to write a definition of what we mean by menopause friendly. And we've done that with a legal team. And we have established a set of criteria that a product or a range of products would need to meet to be able to carry the badge or the mark. So we want to do this with integrity. But we've got to start somewhere, Sarah. And, this can never be an accreditation, because my menopause might be different to your menopause. No one's is going to be the same. It's about choice and control.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, I love that it's that integrity so that it's trusted. If you see that mark, that it's trusted. So you've mentioned about kind of what you've done there with Boots. So how's Gen M working with the partners to support people then? So the practical things that we were talking about that you're putting in place.
Yeah, no, no, it's a great question. So I guess I should probably start with saying that because we've got 70 brands on board now, they're all quite different.
Mm.
You know, I never like to just put a partner in a bucket, but effectively that's what we've got. We've got the big global boys that really have got the means to drive change at pace and are very active. Boots, I've just given that example. QVC, they have invested millions in their menopause TV platform now, and Gen M were invited to the launch of that. They are going to be using the Gen M menopause friendly mark to badge products. So they're doing some great signage there. We're also working with the Royal Mail, who have actually done a fantastic piece of work looking at improving the garments that their female posties can wear. So rather than layering, which isn't using a breathable or sweat wicking fabric, their uniforms are now using that amazing technology that exists in textiles today. And they've just launched a brand new set of breathable garments for their female posties, which is just phenomenal. So we've done that piece of work with the Royal Mail. So there's some great examples of the bigger companies really driving change,
Yeah.
using their weight and using their, their knowledge and network. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got some of the smaller brands really using the assets that Gen M provides every month to get across their social, raising awareness about the symptoms, talking about the collective, and doing what they can with their consumers to really get that normalized conversation out there. So there really is quite a broad spectrum. Clipper, a brilliant logistics company, they are now putting in place every month a Meno cafe for all of their employees virtually up and down the country. And they're using the Gen M network, our experts who will come in and talk about a topic such as diet or nutrition, or we had a doctor talking about HRT or not to HRT. We had another psychologist coming in to talk about how men can support their partners at the time that they're going through this. And psychologist sounds, I know, a bit dramatic, but just to help with some of the terminology and some of the importance around your environment and the need to create a safe place for those conversations. So there's all sorts of stuff going on, which is quite incredible, really.
Yeah, and I think again it highlights this one size doesn't fit all. So some of the companies it's about helping the consumers, signposting and things like that, helping them understand. Others it's about employees, and even things like the Royal Mail, they a large percentage of their staff work out on the streets, delivering mail. So it's very different to the ones sat in the office, and that understanding that one size can't fit all and it has to be adaptable, doesn't it, to people?
It does. It does. I think one of the really positive things about the collective is that it is inclusive and it is collaborative. That was the one thing Heather and I always wanted to try to achieve. And, if somebody had said to me, at your event, Sam, you'll have Boots and Holland and Barrett sitting on the same panel having a conversation. I might have been a bit skeptical, but it's happening. Companies are sharing what they are doing to drive positive change and best practice. The co-op developed a fantastic workplace document for their organization, and they shared it with everybody in the collective for free. And it's that kind of gesture that is so rewarding. And that's what Gen M is encouraging, because we're all in this together. It's not about one brand or organization beating or pipping the other to the post. It's about sharing what we're achieving, and just ensuring that we can all learn from, as I say, this best practice.
Well, that's it. That's brilliant, actually, isn't it? Because yes, there is competition with some of these companies, maybe for customers or employees, if you're looking at benefits and people are moving, but actually working in a collaborative basis and saying, actually, we found this that really works for us is much better for employees and customers alike. If say Boots have found something that works well for them, to be able to share that is quite a big thing, really, because it's probably not something that happens in any other aspect of kind of industry, really. That sharing of information that would help you get more customers, because people tend to not want to give away things that might help their competitors get customers. So it's
It's
great.
very true. Yeah, it is. Yeah,
However,
absolutely. And it is very rewarding and just so wonderful to see. I was taught a very good lesson in my very early days of innocent, actually, that, there's that classic statement, isn't there, that when somebody copies you, it's the biggest form of flattery, or I can't remember the exact terminology, but you
yeah,
know what I mean.
yeah.
But I think taking an idea is one thing, but executing it to a very, very high standard is another. So what we are seeing with Gen M, that actually sharing this information doesn't necessarily mean that your competitive edge is going to disappear, because it's how you execute it and how you embed it into your organization that I think is going to make the difference. And I think going in with that attitude is what's enabling all of these wonderful conversations. We had our Gen M event, the first in person last week, because of COVID. The others have been virtual. And the energy and the positivity was so palpable. It was wonderful. It was great.
What sort of comments are you getting at events like that? Is that with the partners you're working with, or is that with people who are going through the menopause, or both?
It's well, we are a business to business organization, so we don't have any consumers per se in the collective. But of course, a lot of our brand partners are menopausal women or perimenopausal women, or women that will very soon be coming up to that stage. So I think the comments are all incredibly positive around the fact that together we're raising awareness and we're identifying solutions. And because last week we presented the Invisibility Report 2.0, the tracker, we didn't look at the data in a negative way. We all looked at it in a positive way to say, right, now is the time. No more talking. What are the solutions? Let's just get on with it and iterate as we go. Because why wouldn't we want to start now? I'd love to think that by the end of this coming year, 2023, when we look at the tracker again, because we're going to do this annually, I'd love to think that we are going to see that needle move a bit. And I'd love to think that in a few years' time, we're not calling the invisibility report that, we're calling it the visibility report. So women don't feel invisible, they feel more empowered, they have more solutions around them. That would be my aim and wish, really.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely moving in the right direction, isn't it? And I think, like we've said before, it's that positive action that will make the difference. So keeping talking about it, keeping raising the awareness so that people, their opinions are valued and they actually feel heard and change happens. You need the wider the wider world really to understand more what it's like to go through it. It shouldn't just be a taboo subject. It shouldn't just be something that people have to suffer through. Then actually changing that impression, then having positive actions to signpost better products, better availability of products, more consideration in workplaces, more support from family and friends. There's just such a huge knock-on effect, isn't there, from that?
There is, absolutely. I mean, yeah, and there's 15.5 million of us in the UK today that are going through the menopause. And by 2025, there will be 1 billion globally. It's an eye-watering number, and it's a natural transition. It's not negotiable. Half the population are going to go
Yeah.
through it. So I just think it's a no-brainer for me to try and normalize it. And as we do now, puberty, puberty isn't a taboo. We talk about that with our daughters, our nieces quite readily. And I think that, well, what I'm hoping is that my generation will be the first generation that can make those steps to normalize. Because speaking to my goddaughter, who's in her early 20s, she won't put up with this.
Yeah.
She won't put up with a taboo. That generation are going to be very focused on solutions. And if they're not finding them with a brand of choice, they'll go somewhere where they can, or employer of choice. It really won't be a negotiation for that generation. I don't think, nor should it be.
No, and I think that now putting those things in place now will help those brands make sure that they're capturing and making sure they keep customers going forward, because
Yeah.
I guess it's similar to those about the environmentally friendly and sort of the conscientious employers and retailers, how that's gone, that actually people are actively looking for employers and retailers and organizations who, are conscientious with things around the environment and things like that. Maybe it's just the next
It's very
thing.
true. It is. And I think the wellness index will come. I really do. We have B Corp. I mean, I'm talking about my Innocent experience, but Innocent is a B Corp. And I know for a fact that that is a very, very big factor of choice for people now when they're looking for an employer. They are very focused on that. And I think that going forward, women in particular will be just as focused on the wellness index and how employers present themselves with the tools and the support and the services that they have for female health is coming. It
Yeah.
really is. So, and I think that's a positive thing. And as I said at the beginning, I definitely would never want somebody to be fearful of this, whether they're an individual or an employer. It's just about taking a step back and thinking about this proactively and logically, because it's not rocket science.
No, and the answers that they need, they can get by asking their customers, asking their employees. They can get the answers they need of what support is needed just by asking those questions, can't they? And then finding
Yes.
things that can help people and putting policies in place and thinking about how they can do things just by speaking to employees, by speaking to you, by looking at the research. So there's a lot of support out there and a lot of ways they can learn what they need to do, isn't there?
Absolutely. And the information is there now. It really is coming. And I think that that's partly what Gen M is here to do, is just to encourage that action. We hold them to task. We don't just accept any partner into the collective. They have a commitment that they are going to take action and drive change. We don't tell them what to do. That wouldn't be our place, of course. I wouldn't be arrogant to assume that I could even do that. But we do hold a mirror up to them. It's not about a tick box exercise or just being part of a club for us. It's about come on board and get clear on what strategy you are going to put in place, however small. And then with our awards, we celebrate success. And because that's important too. Baby steps are good, and it's about supporting and celebrating the success, because not everybody can take a big giant leap like the Boots or the QVCs of this world, but we can all do something small. In fact, there was that wonderful quote. I think it was the Dalai Lama originally, and I know Anita Roddick has said it, but if you think you're too small to make a change, try sleeping with a mosquito.
Yeah.
And that always, struck, with me a chord, because that's how I feel about the menopause.
Yeah.
No small step is too small. Just take the step and start.
Because even if it's just your two employees in the business that you've got that you make a difference to, that's two people's lives you've positively impacted. So like you say, any step is a good step. And what from all the work you've done and the work you do with partners, what advice would you give to somebody who believes they're going through the menopause to sort of get the help and support that they need?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, is because I'm not a doctor, so I should certainly say that. But from what I've seen, from my own experience and from what I've seen, I do think we owe it to ourselves not to stick our head in the sand. I do have some friends that are currently doing that, and I don't think that helps, because it just kicks the can down the road. If you feel different, however small that difference may be, if you've got physical symptoms or you're just feeling a bit off the boil, and you are late 30s, it might be that you are starting your perimenopause journey. So read up on it. The British Menopause Society, in fact, our website, gen-com, it's got some brilliant resources on there that people can take a look, read, start to familiarize yourself, but don't be fearful of it. Just try to get some data around you and have conversations with people. I know that's sometimes quite hard, and you've got to be a bit brave sometimes to start that conversation. But in my experience, once you start, you'll find the support is often there in bucket loads, and shared experiences can really help identify where you might get some solutions. I would say go and see your GP. From my experience, that's a bit of a postcode lottery. That didn't really work for me personally. I
Mm.
struggled to find a GP that knew very much about the menopause, but that's not the case across the whole country. And I know there's some wonderful, um, you know, parts of the country that are really trying to do more to support us in this space. But I'm not going to just sit here and say, go to your GP, because I don't think that always works.
Yeah.
But medical help is definitely needed. And hopefully your listeners, if they are in need of that, they have got a good GP surgery or practice that can help them.
Yeah, and I think if you can do things like looking at the symptoms on your website, keep track of those symptoms. First of all, there's things to help with the symptoms on your
Well,
website.
I know a very good planner, Sarah, that your listeners can, because what I loved about your planner was that it was just a comprehensive guide as to what to look for and how to record the symptoms and your changes. So your planner is a brilliant, brilliant starting point. Or there are apps out there as well. You're right. I mean, it was too late for me to record my symptoms because I was too far down I'd been living with them and not really, I don't think, recognizing it, which is why I was in a bit of a mess when I finally did. But if you are starting to feel a little different, absolutely start jotting them down and making a record. Because when you do go and speak to somebody medically, that helps enormously.
Yeah, with that diagnosis. And like you say, speaking to other people, it just validates how you're feeling. It might help you realize, yes, you probably are in the menopause, but also some of the things you've been worrying about and thinking, whether it's worrying you've got dementia, things like that, it just validates how you're feeling and that actually it's
It
okay and
does.
normal to feel like that.
And you can have a bit of a laugh about it as well, because humor's great. And there are some really wonderful books out there that are very humorous, are very well written. I'm certainly not making a joke of it, but most people will not have a tough time. Most people will just need a little bit of support with the changes their body is going through. Others, a small percentage, do have a very, very tough time. But for most of us, it's about recognizing it and not leaving it too late, really, to, as you say, start jotting it down and recording the changes.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much. I'll when I share this, I'll also share the web address so that people can find you and see all that information. But thank you so
Yeah.
much. You're doing an amazing job.
Oh, thank you.
Such a
Thank
difference.
you.
So thank
Well,
you.
right back at you, Sarah. It's always lovely to meet purposeful and purpose-driven people and companies and brands. And you do some amazing work in the fertility and starting to in the menopause space as well. So thank you. But people can follow us on social, and there'll be lots of information there that, as I say, your listeners might find helpful, and also highlighting the brands that are really stepping up to the plate,
Yeah.
because that's important too.
Yeah, definitely, because then you know where to go to get the support you
Yeah,
need and the product you need.
exactly.
So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
brilliant. Well,
great. Well, it's
thank
lovely
you
to
so
see you.
much. You too.